cannot The canvas of Kibella's soul has become a battlefield. I see sparks of acid green doubt giving rise to new shades of regret, pride, and cruelty. They are ruining her former palette of anthracite and scarlet, mixing into ever more murky and frightening colors. Master Anthar is enveloped in dense gold, but like the sun on an ice world, its radiance offers no warmth, only the steely sheen of immovability. Sometimes I see flashes of another color. It is as if the metal carapace were only a screen, but deep down inside, scarlet fire rages. I haven't...
Greetings, Rogue Trader. I would like to report that Glato and I have finished our initial inspection of the upper decks. The list of infractions ended up being 5 pages shorter than expected. I'm beginning to worry that a servant of the Lex might have little to occupy himself with aboard your ship. I doubt such a word could ever be accurately used to describe an arbitrator, but there is some truth to your observation. Since we're not in combat, I permit myself to stand at ease, which is to say, I'm standing by on full alert. We are servants of the God Emperor's law, made manifest in the Lex Imperialis. The Adeptus Arbates uphold order on the scale of the Imperium and bring merciless punishment to offenders. The most significant ones. Beyond the Expanse, the Arbates not only enforce tithe collection, but also ensure that every planet obeys his law and that the Imperium's authority remains unchallenged. Corrupt governors, crime syndicates, rebels. Not a minute goes by without some parasite trying to take a bite out of the Imperium. We destroy any who dare trespass against the law. Unless said man's innocence has been previously established, such as during an investigation. In any other scenario, murder is just a common disturbance. My intervention is only required in the case of an attack on an administratum functionary or some other important figure. Then, I must take measures. However, if I have an assignment to carry out, I will ignore any distracting factors. The duties of the Arbates are above everyday crime. We collect the tithe that feeds the military might of the Imperium and sustains its authority over many worlds. To be bogged down in trivialities is to commit a criminal waste of time and resources that have been granted to us to serve the absolute of the law. Your suggestion that I could have prevented the disappearance of a star sounds almost flattering. And yet, I never dodge responsibility. Let the Emperor, in the hour of his final judgment, determine the measure of my guilt in what happened. Those are indeed the greatest threat to the Imperium, and I never leave a heretic I meet without a bullet lodged inside him. But such matters are primarily handled by other forces, which are influential enough so as not to be mentioned out loud without a reason. I am at your disposal. As you saw for yourself on Rykad Minoris, quite far. The Arbates passed the sentence and carried it out summarily. Only the highest echelons of Terra and servants of the Inquisition and rogue traders here in the Expanse can expect the privilege of a trial. Planetary governors, nobility, clergy, to an arbitrator, they are all equal before the law. Testing me, are you? That is fine by me. The Lex Imperialis is both a code of law and the word of the God Emperor himself. For millennia, his decrees have been amassed and preserved on Holy Terra, in the Hall of Judgment, alongside the High Lord's orders. It is at once a titanic collection of edicts and a holy text. It does. Your capital world operates under the Lex Dargonus, formed over many generations of the Von Valancius line. However, the Lex Imperialis is the final word in every debate. It stands above any legal directives a planet may have, for it comes from the Emperor himself. It would take longer than a lifetime to read through even a fraction of his law. But there are fundamental, integral prescripts that every arbitrator knows verbatim. These are the Injuncta Cardinal, inscribed on the walls of the Arbites precinct fortresses and etched into our ammo casings. We quote them as the indisputable truth and recite them like psalms as we charge into battle. As it should. The codes of the Lex Imperialis are my prayer, and I believe that every arbitrator's service is sacred, for it brings this imperfect reality closer to that inscribed in the Book of Judgment, closer to the God Emperor's will. I am listening. To collect and guard the tithe. That does not mean we ignore other violations of the Lex Imperialis. We simply act within the scope of our limited resources, the first of which being our small numbers. Here in the Expanse, many believe themselves to be too far from the civilized parts of the Imperium to have need of the law. The presence of the Adeptus Arbites helps to remind those people that the Lex Imperialis is in effect wherever there is at least one human being. You prefer to have a better understanding of the people you travel with. That makes sense. Ask. Port Wanda in Calixis. The gateway to the Expanse, a monumental station, always covered in ships and bursting at the seams from all the dealers, pilgrims, mercenaries, and criminals. Compared to Port Wanda, Footfall is just a lifeless rock in the void. On Dargonis, Lady Theodora gave the top level of one of the spires over to the Arbites. A noble house used to occupy it before it decided to stick its hand into the dynasty's coffers. By offering us such prominent lodgings, your predecessor both reinforced her ties to the Arbites and made an unambiguous gesture toward the nobility. She was a shrewd woman and unforgiving. I must admit, I was pleasantly surprised. I'd expected something far less civilized, given that the Coronis Expanse is on the outskirts of the Imperium. Instead, Dargonis may even compare to some Calixian worlds in status and stability. How? The short answer is the Schola Progenium. But I doubt you'd be satisfied with that. My father was an arbitrator, a good one, or else they wouldn't have found him in an alley filled with bullet holes. Someone who served with my father told me he was shot with 10 different weapons, and that he took at least 4 of the bastards down with him. I was sent to the Schola Progenium right after that, and the mentors there forged me into an arbitrator. I was an eager student, thanks to the example of unyielding duty and dignity my father set for me. The only thing I didn't need to borrow from him was hate. He didn't instill that. It was always with me. I never doubted that criminal vermin deserve only execution, but it was my father's death that truly crystallized my hatred, made it complete. No. I didn't want to. There was a time when I wasn't sure what to think of my father's death. Or rather, I tried not to think at all. I didn't look into the case, or for any other reason, to go back to Port Wanda. Arbitrators are never assigned to their homeworlds anyway. But when I was leaving Calixis, our ship spent several days docked at the station, and so I permitted myself to go to the spot where my father was killed. I stood there for a while, and nothing. I knew that another arbitrator would have already seen the investigation through. I had nothing left to do there. It's possible. He didn't speak much. Sometimes we went days without saying a word to each other. The only time he was talkative was when he was going through his cases at night. He would inform me in terse and simple words who had sold out and why, what depravities the heretics from the lower hive levels had committed, what base motives the workers had had for hanging their foremen. All I did was listen, watch, and think. That was enough. From what my father told me, she was a principled woman of poor health. She died in childbirth. Not having known her might be the sole regret of my life. It's all true. I am a second-generation arbitrator, and my father is as dead as it gets. I wonder if being killed in action runs in the family. I guess I should hold off until I have a kid. You should ask the Marshal. I got my assignment, and that is all I know. I assume it's due to my experience. Collecting tithes from worlds bordering on savagery, and where people haven't seen a living arbitrator in 3 generations, is a task best left to a veteran. This isn't banishment. Otherwise, the same would apply to the Marshal and all other arbitrators in the Coronis Expanse. We are here because the Imperium needs its tithe, and that's all there is to it. I suppose I have what you would call a proven and diverse track record. Investigations, rebel suppressions, punitive raids, dozens of completed operations. There was this one time. I was part of a raid on a gang of mutants. I excelled in battle, received an award, and was promoted to Proctor. That is all. I just hoped it would discourage you. I only know how to give a full and exact account, and this story about lost limbs and odious abominations, I wasn't sure if a rogue trader would appreciate having to listen to all that. Very well. Have you ever been eaten alive? I have. That raid I mentioned was compromised. The enemy had been tipped off to our operation, and we had walked into a trap. Some mutants decided to chew my arm off. That was a mistake. Since I couldn't free myself, I pushed my hand down his throat, grabbed something inside, and used him as a shield. While the thing was gnawing on my bones and spraying me with ichor and my own blood, I opened fire on the rest of the scum. That little maneuver bought my unit a few critical seconds. Fortune has little to do with it. You have formed an alliance with the Arbites, just as your predecessor did. My presence here is only the expected result of your decisions. I am listening. I've never been a part of a rogue trader's escort before. That said, I adapt to change more quickly than you might think, and as long as Glato is with me, I can handle any transition. You hear that, Glato? The rogue trader herself is asking about you. His serial number is GL80. Glato is easier to say in Gothic. Many give their cybermastiffs striking names like Slayer or Thunder. I'm fine with Glato. He mostly provides combat support. He is trained in both lethal and non-lethal ways of disabling a target, with the ability to analyze a situation and then decide on a course of action. Glato is a good tracker too, and he can spot basic evidence. He also knows over 100 commands. In general, he is more resourceful and diligent than most people I've met. Glato, ready! The frame is mostly metal, with armored plates covering the vital segments. The jaw is reinforced. Crunching a leg off is like tearing a hair out for him. I don't even know a tenth of all the things Glato is fitted with, but it's an impressive list to be sure. Take the sensors in his nose for one. The Cybermastiff is like an odor analysis laboratory. Alright, that's that. Glato, attention. They range from kill and guard and the like, to more complex guard and patrol protocols. A protocol is a combination of behavioral patterns, which the Cybermastiff follows according to the present situation. In other words, I don't have to control Glato all the time. He can adjust and react to the circumstances on his own. That is a useless command, Rogue Trader. A Cybermastiff must always be in an advantageous position to attack the enemy. Glato can crawl or move stealthily if the situation calls for it, but regardless, he will not respond to someone else's order. As you wish. Generally, Cybermastiffs have all aspects of their animal nature removed, but Glato is a special case. His submodel takes a dog's loyalty and instincts as a hunter and guard, and renders them absolute. He is neither a dog nor a servitor. He is something much more. A Cybermastiff, a living weapon in service of the law. Glato is not a pet. He is an instrument of justice, as am I. I haven't had to so far. I do not spend time contemplating such things. It is a fruitless pastime at best. Him or any other weapon that lies in the hands of the law. Only my service to the Lex Imperialis determines the level on which I stand. Impossible. You found me out? Yes, I am 1/100% less indifferent than I let on. Correct. Both his training and his augmetics ensure that Glato only accepts orders from me or from my superior officers. Apart from having the obvious benefits, it also serves to prevent disarray on missions involving multiple Cybermastiff handlers. You know where to find me, Rogue Trader. Rogue Trader. I must remind you that Glato is a living weapon. If you like the number of fingers you have, do not touch the dog. No? If I had a throne for every time I turned down a plea, I would have enough to buy your flagship. For your own preservation, drop this idea of yours. I am sure a rogue trader can afford the best implants. Have you decided to make an exception for the Emperor's anointed Glato? Fine. Congratulations on your achievement, Rogue Trader. Glato has never allowed anyone to do that before. Glato is not a house pet, Rogue Trader. Trying to feed him will get you nowhere. He only eats out of my hands, and only at specific times. Strict training. It protects the Cybermastiff against deliberate poisoning and other ill intents. Basically, don't waste your time or your meat. Sometimes I let him play with heretics' corpses. That was a joke. If you're asking about entertainment, that concept does not really apply to an Arbite's dog. But I like to imagine that Glato is enthusiastic about training with me, that he enjoys running long distances at my side. And during target practice, he always seems eager to hear me give the attack order. Fine, let me satisfy your curiosity. I do have a special exercise that helps to sharpen Glato's hunting instincts. I take a few ammo casings and hide them in hard-to-reach places. One time, after a raid on a manufactorum, I gave him a whole abandoned workshop to run around in, but I also played a trick on him by throwing one casing onto a ceiling beam. Then it was Glato's turn to play tricks. He waited under the beam until I walked up to him, then he jumped onto my shoulders and climbed to the top. He cut my temple open with his claw and almost broke my clavicle, but he got the casing. The equipment needs to be sturdy. Glato is unstoppable when he's not holding back. Thank you. You... Rogue Trader, are you talking about the night we spent together? I do not think we should attach any greater meaning to it than it's worth. I'm rarely mistaken in such matters, Rogue Trader. You know where to find.
Powers unseen uncover my path. Your existence is naught but ashes!
Me? If you insist, Lord Captain.
I will triumph. I can do that, with the right incentive. I need no guidance.
The shadows will see it done. Trust me. Caught by the web.
Glato, we're undertaking this task.
The world will bow.
Give us a target.
May the Exalted One protect...
My apologies. 19% of my processing power is engaged in the analysis of my tech comrade's memory. My response time may be longer than usual. The data is scarce. His identification code is the same as mine, and his memory contains data confirming that the assassination did take place. Unfortunately, some of his memory was damaged by pulses broadcast by his battle harness. I can assert with some confidence that he was who he claimed to be, and that he served the Deus Mechanicus earnestly and eagerly. My study of the minds of the tech comrades, Abel, Tarsus, and Demence, has revealed an anomalous similarity between the patterns of damage their memories sustained. What I attributed to cognitive idiosyncrasies, synaptic damage, and the distortive action of scrap code may be the result of a different kind of influence. The undecryptable data fragments in their memory arrays are mysteriously symmetrical. Notwithstanding his permanent state of agony, he was not cognitively dysfunctional. His desire to immediately destroy the object he had deemed profane was partly dictated by his engrammatic augmetics, which were receiving imperatives from his battle harness. In light of the oddness of our matching identification codes, I find merit in his hypothesis as to the existence of a clandestine malevolent agent or conspiracy operating inside our fraternity. No data available. I will hypothesize that the assassination was instigated by an enemy of the Blessed Amanat's doctrine. I accept the possibility that the assassins were targeting me, only to be led astray by Tarsus and my own identical identifiers. I am concerned about the fate of Archmagos Amanat. According to Opticon 22, he went missing in the wake of the incident on an Arc Mechanicus, the Hermetico. Information about that ship and its perishing has been purged from the archives. I accept the possibility that the incident on the ship, the concealed data, and the assassination have all been part of a single conspiracy. This statement is true. There were also the bodies we discovered in the hallowed electrodynamic cenobium of unknown infiltrators who had posed as members of the cult of the Final Dawn. There is merit to the hypothesis that all carriers of Magos Haneman's identification code are targets of persecution. That is a valid hypothesis, but not a very likely one. Its truth value is irrelevant, as it does not contradict the necessity of establishing the fate of Archmagus Amanat. I was not knowledgeable as to how popular Blessed Amanat's teaching was in explorator circles. The Cognizance fleet is massive. His ideas might have found a larger following on its periphery than in the Mother Squadron. Of course, faith is dangerous. Faith is the prerogative of the spirit, and a spiritless mind is an enemy of all existence. Without faith, there is no meaning in anything, no point to any aspirations or limitations. But faith can take different forms. The form of prohibitions established by unknown elders, the form of an audacious violation of those prohibitions, the form of following dogma or of schism, the form of following the cycle or of discontinuing the cycle. In a system with two courses of action, schism is inevitable, and only one of these paths will be true, as truth is discreetly separate from untruth. Ammonites did not reject any one specific prohibition, but found their cumulative effect to be oppressive. The system of rigid limitations had confined seekers of knowledge to a circular track, spelling doom for the thinking mind. And that cycle of repetition had to be broken. That was why he was dubbed the Messiah of Discontinuing. Faith is a tool of control, but that control is of a wholesome kind. It is a safety circuit preventing the mind from lapsing into corruption. Which, however, is not to say that being protected can never be oppressive, or that being cared for can never lead to degradation. I will continue my research into the Blessed Martyr's memory with all due reverence. May your labor...
Lord Captain,